We recently hit yet another huge milestone here at the Cyberwork podcast, 25,000 YouTube subscribers. Thanks to all of you who watch and listen each week, to those of you who watch the YouTube videos go live and chat with each other in comments, and to everyone who is helping us to grow this great community. To give back, we're now giving you 30 days of team training for teams of 10 or more. Your Infosec Skills account will help your entire team develop their skills and earn CPEs through hundreds of IT and security courses, cloud-hosted cyber ranges, hands-on projects, skills assessments, and certification practice exams. Plus, you can easily monitor, assign, and track training progress with team admin and reporting features. If you have 10 or more people who need skills training, head over to infosecinstitute.com/cyberwork or click the link in the description to take advantage of this special offer for Cyberwork listeners. And thank you once again for listening to and watching our podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you coming back each week. And on that note, I've got someone I'd like you to meet, so let's begin the episode. Welcome to this week's episode of the Cyberwork with Infosec podcast. Each week, I sit down with a different industry thought leader, and we discuss the latest cybersecurity trends, how those trends are affecting the work of Infosec professionals, while offering tips for those trying to break in or move up in the ladder in the cybersecurity industry. Our topic today is AI and machine learning, and it's going to be an exciting, if possibly scary one. We've heard all about deepfakes, and if you haven't, go look it up. Through a combination of incredible processing power and some rudimentary artificial intelligence technology, and a lot of ingenuity and deviousness, hackers and other bad actors are able to curate very realistic videos of human beings that appear to be saying unexpected, scandalous, seemingly impossible things. Though there are telltale signs that something's up, viewers looking to have their biases confirmed may not go through a mental checklist before sharing this type of harmful and blatantly false info through social media. This type of information could be especially catastrophic as we move into another election year. Emmanuel Tsukerman is a professor of data science and machine learning. He's created several courses for our Infosec Skills platform on this very topic. We're going to talk today about the deep learning applications of cybercrime, as well as some of the ways the same types of technologies can be used to counteract these threats. We'll also be talking about the data science and machine learning courses that Emmanuel's created for Infosec Skills and how they can help your security career to rise to the next level. Emmanuel, welcome to Cyberwork.
Thank you, Chris. It's an honor to be here on Cyberwork.
Thank you so much for your time. So I want to start out by asking you a bit about your security journey. How did you first get interested in computers and tech and cybersecurity, and when did your attention turn to topics around AI and machine learning?
So actually, I started my journey outside of cybersecurity, focusing on statistics, machine learning, and applied math more broadly. And then I got into cybersecurity because I knew it's a great place for disruption, and it's always dynamically evolving. So it's never going to be a boring field to work at.
And you found that to be true, I assume?
Yeah. Especially.
Yeah.
Could you with the developments of.
Okay, so could you give me a sort of a compressed version of the project's positions and training that took you from your early career to your current work as an educator and security consultant? What were some major educational, experientials, or project-based touchstones that, shall we say, made you what you are today?
Yeah. So when I first got out of school, I joined a small startup of 4 people. And the startup was focused on IoT security. So at that time, IoT was exploding. It was kind of early. And we went on customer interviews asking large hospital IT managers, what are their primary concerns? What kind of products would be best for them? What's their interest? And we learned that they're actually concerned about, all of them were concerned about ransomware. So then we decided, why don't we incorporate some ransomware aspects in our IoT suite? And I worked on this project. I was sort of the new person, so I was assigned this project. And the first question that I had was, why is ransomware a problem? Because there's antivirus, right? And ransomware is a virus. Well, I learned that at that time, this was a few years ago, AVs mostly relied on signatures and heuristics. So signatures are kind of like a catalog, to be very simple about it. And heuristics are like rules that people come up with that are likely to work. But the problem was that every day you get like hundreds of thousands of new samples, and there's no way these techniques can keep up. And the bad guys are constantly innovating with new types of ransomware, new techniques, new ways to penetrate, and it's always a problem. So we decided that since these approaches don't work, heuristics and signatures, maybe this is a perfect application for machine learning. And having a data science background, I decided, let me try it out. Maybe it'll work. I mean, it sounds promising. Machine learning should be able to learn from the data. It should be able to learn from history and then figure out new samples that we haven't seen before, which is the issue we are facing. So I developed a virtual lab. I collected samples, conducted experiments, and eventually we did prototype a machine learning product, like a machine learning prototype. And we tried it out, we demoed it, and we decided we're going to pivot completely from IoT to ransomware. So then we went ahead and developed this product, and it was quite successful. We had customers from large enterprises, we got awards, and so on. And that was my first experience in cybersecurity. It was like this, I didn't know what to expect. I come in for IoT, I shift into this experimental thing of ransomware, and it's very exciting.
So it sounds like you kind of
I also worked at Palo. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, it sounds like you came into the sort of birth of ransomware fairly early too. Like that was pretty much a newly developed thing at the time. Was that sort of part of the sort of opportunity, was that no one else was really sort of working this area?
Yeah, it was right before WannaCry, but
okay.
So it was like after some ransomware was out there, people are afraid, but it was before like the really big things happened, like WannaCry and NotPetya.
Gotcha. So I want to talk today a little bit about deepfakes. On the Infosec blog, you wrote about how deep learning and deepfakes are changing the face of cybersecurity. This is, of course, a huge subject right now, especially this year. And you note that because of the rise of this technology, you said, quote, the ability of basic human intuition to prevent attacks is at an all-time low, whereas the need for training and specialists in cybersecurity is at an all-time high. This is obviously scary stuff, but you also note that machine learning can be used as a countermeasure, and that, to quote you, for every tool that utilizes deep learning for offensive purposes, there's a tool that uses deep learning to benefit humanity. Can you tell us something about some of these counteroffensive tools that use this emerging technology to bring the fight to the bad actors?
Yeah, for sure. So let me start by explaining why I think human intuition is now at an all-time low. So there's a recent crime where fraudsters, they managed to get a company. So there's like a child company and a parent company, and they got the child company to transfer $250,000. And the way they did it was they pretended to be the CEO of this larger company using voice transfer artificial intelligence technology. So it's like deepfake, but for voice. Like maybe I take your voice, Chris, and I say something using your voice. And now I convince people who know you that you're saying it, and therefore it must be this way. And they indeed managed to do this. And I think the most disturbing part is that, I mean, this person, the victim, was the CEO of the child company. He knew the CEO of the parent company. It's not like complete strangers.
Wow.
And you'd think that maybe intuition would work here, but no. So I think that if he was more aware of this possibility, I mean, maybe he had some nagging doubts like, does that make sense for the CEO to ask to transfer 250,000 to this
Right.
unknown place? Well, no, but it is his voice, right? So
Sure.
I guess it's him. But if he knew that now we have technology that allows you to imitate someone's voice, then presumably he would be much more cautious. You double check if that really makes sense. Maybe call up the CEO of the
Right.
parent company and see that it's not him.
Yeah.
So now there are a lot of tools out there, almost for every, I guess I'd call it like a forgery technology. There is a counter technology that can detect when it's forgery. So there is, for instance, technology for detecting deepfakes. I guess we haven't defined deepfakes yet, but basically the most common instance is when you take a video of someone, let's say a video of me talking, and you replace my face with someone else. So
Right.
it can be a political figure, it can be maybe you replace a criminal's face with
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
someone else, and then
Right.
you're now how, basically getting someone else to take the fault.
Yep.
And it's shockingly convincing. I mean, I've seen videos of this and I can't tell, is it the fake or is it the real person? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So this is the deepfake technology. But yeah, there is technology for countering it. Like you feed it into a neural network and it can tell you, is this fake or is it real? And the same applies for a lot of other things that are becoming more forgeable, like phishing, voice, and so on and so forth. So there are these technologies out there. And another approach is also reputation scoring. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of rising reputation score, like risk scoring using AI that can tell you if it's likely to be a scam or something like that.
Okay. Now, can we talk about some ways that deep learning could affect cyber attacks, whether to enhance social engineering or stock market manipulations, for example? Since so, I was going to say, since we don't know what we don't know, could we talk a little bit about some of the different possible types of deepfake enhanced attacks that we should be watching out for? Like, what are some of the areas that deepfakes are most likely to be used in? Like I said, I mentioned, that you could get a voice saying, sell all the stocks, or you could get, a social engineering thing saying, hey, it's Chris, I'm in trouble, send me money, dad, or whatever. But like, what are the sort of like main areas where deepfakes could really sort of do a lot of damage that you see?
Yeah, so you mentioned, I think one of the most important ones is phishing.
Mm-hmm.
So this is for the common person, everyday life. You can be concerned about voice impersonation, some maybe if someone is conferencing you, you don't really know what's happening behind the screen. If it's so there has been demos where people do deep fakes live. So for instance, for all we know, this isn't my face. Maybe
Right.
I'm like anonymous where I put on different faces or
Yeah.
something like that. There is another area of huge concern for for I guess everyone, and which is the elections. So you can
Yes.
imagine a broadcast of one of the candidates or someone related saying something, and people wouldn't know that it's a fake. And I've in the blog post I show a short video where they have the former president Barack Obama saying some nonsense,
Mm-hmm.
but until he says the nonsense, like he starts out very formal, and you think that looks real, and then
Yeah.
you see a different person who's like a puppet master
Mm-hmm.
who's talking in his stead. So that those are a few of the critical ones.
Right. Do you have any sort of tips for people sort of watching out for this kind of thing? Like I said, I know most people are going to want to, use their confirmation bias and say, well, this person said it and I didn't like it. I don't like this person, so therefore they probably said it. But like I've seen, for example, people say that like you can check like the hairline sometimes is a little off, or the way the eyes move or stuff like that. Do you have any kind of sort of aesthetic tips in terms of watching out for this kind of thing?
Yeah, so I have two thoughts on this. So one is, yeah, because usually, at least in the technology that's been commonly used in the past few years, you could see like the face like placed here, and then there might be a tiny bit of problems in the connection here. Like that's where you would see
Right.
that it's a different face.
Mm-hmm.
But nowadays it's becoming much more convincing, and there are even, I forgot to mention that you can have deepfakes that aren't just the face, so that you can have deepfakes for the whole body.
Right.
You can have deepfakes for colors like car color, the color of the shirt I'm wearing.
Mm-hmm.
You can replace license plates and
Yep.
titles and so on and so forth. So I think that's also an area to keep an eye out for. Is not just the technology itself becoming better, like easier to generate a deepfake and the little artifacts of
Right.
deepfake being harder to see, but also the applications, people coming up with very clever ones where you wouldn't know that they're doing it.
Yeah. So yeah, so I mean, what are your thoughts on how to combat this? Because I mean, it sounds very apocalyptic in the sense that I can't really think of any way in which, we're going to sort of be able to shut this down. So what are your sort of tips or advice coming into this election year, whether legislative or just individual person? Like what do we do?
Yeah, it's a good question. So when I think about this, it feels kind of like I'm writing almost like a science fiction
Yeah.
novel.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, so in the future, all videos will be deep fakes. You won't be
Right.
able to tell if it's real or not.
Yes.
Audios will be, but then, so it's kind of like this sort of like Blade Runner thing. But I think that, so this is just my thoughts, is that in the future, we're gonna cryptographically sign videos.
Okay.
So there will be like a certifying authority, just like, you have for the internet or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you would basically trust someone. So maybe if it's, the US government that releases a candidate's introduction or whatever it is, and there's like a cryptographic signature that you can verify for yourself and say, okay, that is the US government, no one is fooling me. Whereas if it's a different country that's releasing the video for that candidate,
Yep.
you'll have they won't be able to verify it. So that's my thinking about that. But I think there'll be like two types of media, like the certified with cryptographic signatures, and then stuff that you can't verify, that no one knows what if it's true or not. Maybe it's more for entertainment.
Right. Do you
So I
foresee?
think we will get over it. I was gonna say, I think there will be a time where there will be confusion, some fear, and a need for people to step in and come up with solutions, which I suggested one. We'll see if it's viable or not.
Right. That was going to be my question, was whether or not such a device is currently on the market, or whether it's something that we're still sort of speculating about at this point.
Yeah, I think the technology is there. It's more of the desire to do it,
Right. The rollout.
but remains to be seen.
Yeah. So you also mentioned, interesting blog post on our site about using machine learning applications to intercept and negate ransomware before the worst happens. And you mentioned a little bit at the start of the show. Could we talk more about that technology? What exactly are these sort of machine learning enhanced tools doing to sort of stave off ransomware before the worst happens?
Yeah, sure. Let me start with maybe how you don't don't detect ransomware.
Mm-hmm.
So, like a naive approach is to come up with some rules. Like you study ransomware and you see, looks like ransomware likes to change extensions. So maybe I'm going to come up with a rule where if a process changes the extensions of 5 files, say, and these extensions are not known, then let us, kill this process, quarantine the file that produced it, and declare it to be ransomware. And this is like your rule. It's like rule A. But then the problem is, what if this ransomware, for instance, takes the files, copies them, encrypts a new thing, and encrypts the copy, and then erases the original. Then now it got through your heuristic. Or what if it encrypts a bunch of them at once? And again, you have a problem. And you have to keep in account that you don't produce false positives, like legitimate applications that you've flagged. So then you think of ways that are better, and the solution is machine learning, which I would say the definition is like automatic production of rules using large data and at scale. So we came up with like one rule that didn't quite work, but we can let the data come up with rules itself and at scale, and then we have a solution for ransomware. So in that sense, you basically let the data come up with the rules instead of trying to keep up and having many people try various rules and then they get out of date a month later because hackers are privy to what people are up to. And then you have a solution that's also able to catch future attacks, like zero-day attacks.
Right.
Because
Okay, so moving on to the heart of the talk today, I want to talk to you about your work with Infosec Skills, our skills-based platform. Could you tell us about your cybersecurity data science skills courses and how they relate to this very current security concern?
Yeah, so I'm often keeping an eye out on the market and what's going on. And I see a lot of disruption and innovation coming from machine learning in particular in cybersecurity. So for instance, you'll see like a startup that claims we have a solution to phishing, and it relies on machine learning to maybe create a reputation score, or maybe it's an amalgamation of different solutions all together. And I think for I guess for job applicants and other people in cybersecurity, when you're applying, and if you have a machine learning or data science experience, then you are an asset, because the hiring manager looks at it, and maybe imagine we have like two candidates, one with the machine learning skills and one without, and they see like the person with the machine learning skills could be potentially helpful in designing this new solution that we are working on. And this doesn't only apply to startups. There's also a lot of disruption in larger enterprises, because they are aware that there are all these startups coming up that are disrupting, so they need to disrupt themselves. And they are also hiring a lot of data scientists and machine learning practitioners in order to develop these new products. So that was kind of my reasoning from a market perspective, why I think it is very useful to have these skills, aside from the practical usage of creating better solutions to cybersecurity problems. Now, going in more details to the learning paths, the goal is to basically give people the fundamentals, the background, so that they can afterwards specialize in what they need. Because you never know, like maybe you need to specialize in phishing, and that's something you'll have to research. But if you have the basic tools, machine learning, you will apply your domain knowledge from phishing, and you'll apply your tools to the domain of phishing.
Right.
So I cover a lot of things, but in particular, I cover how machine learning is used for malware detection. I go in a lot of depth here on the feature engineering, the collection of the data. I talk about end-to-end machine learning, which is basically where you just let the neural network figure everything out by itself.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of like an amazing new thing. And I talk about how to use machine learning for intrusion detection.
Okay.
So that is things like IDSs that rely on data science and data. And I talk about social engineering. So that's like deepfakes, performing OSINT automatically, for instance, like having your machine learning system extract the text from videos and then searching through the text to find what you're looking for. For instance, maybe you want to know someone's, let's say, Twitter account, and then you perform and you utilize this text extraction to find the keyword Twitter, and then that helps you automate the search through all the person's videos, which could be like thousands. Okay, and then that's the cybersecurity data science learning path. There is a more advanced learning path, which is machine learning for red team hackers.
Oh.
So here I go in depth on pen testing, and I do it from both sides of the equation. So how to use machine learning to attack and how to use machine learning to prevent attacks. And also how to attack machine learning systems. So I show how to do deepfakes from A to Z. I show how to attack machine learning systems for the purpose of red teaming. And I show how to do smart fuzzing. So I think you had a guest not too long ago discussing fuzzing. So I show how to use machine learning to take it to the next level so that your fuzzer is learning from what it's seeing. So these are really powerful techniques. And I think I cover such a broad range of topics that anyone who's done these learning paths has like a very good background. They can probably find similarity between whatever problem they're working on and something that you learn in the course.
Great. So I want to talk a little bit about something. Whenever we talk about AI and machine learning on the show, and we've had a couple other guests that have talked in similar areas, we get comments and questions about the possibility that improved automation process will replace low-level cybersecurity careers. Now, is that a real fear, or should professionals in the cybersecurity ladder be considering these factors when choosing their career in the long term, or is it more of a, sort of an add-on to the sort of human element?
So I think this has been a fear that's kind of always been with us in the sense that we've always been concerned of getting automated out of our jobs. And I think that applies to everyone, but I don't see it as a problem. I think machine learning is going to be more of a tool that enhances your ability, kind of like a computer. Like you can do whatever a computer does. Like if you are filling out data, you can do it on pen and paper, but in a computer it's faster.
Sure.
So I think the same would apply for, let's say, security analysts. Like if they come up with rules or they're looking at the SIM or something like that, well, they can like 10x or 100x what they're doing by letting a machine learning system come up with more rules, better rules, or check the rules that they have. And similarly, if you are looking at a SIM or SOC, you might use a machine learning system to focus your attention. So you don't have to look at so many events, but maybe the system will tell you, these are like the top 100 events, focus your attention here. Because the machine learning system is obviously not as intelligent as humans are. We are aware of many more things, the context, the background, and so on and so forth. So it makes sense to use it to kind of whittle down the easy stuff and bring into our attention the important stuff that requires humans to solve.
Yeah, that's really worth noting in the sense that, you know, a lot of people think that it's going to take away sort of humans, but it can't really take away human intuition. All it can do is add more computing power. But, you know, a lot of the sort of problem solving is sort of having a human interpreting what another human is doing on the other side, and that's always going to be necessary, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely.
So what can students taking these machine learning and data science courses expect to learn? You talked about it a little bit, but what types of career or professional specializations would be best utilized by learning about machine learning as you'll be teaching it? What you know, where would you start once you sort of have this information under your belt?
So I thought about this question, and I think that it is especially, these skills are especially useful for practitioners, people who are developing things, like for instance, security analysts who need to come up with better rules, or maybe people who are looking to catch malware to improve the malware detection capabilities in their organization. But I think another section of people that benefits a lot from this understanding is actually the decision makers, because they're the ones who will decide, what should we invest in? Should we purchase this tool? Should we do this training? Should we develop this new machine learning tool? Like, how difficult would it be? Is it practical? Can it perform better than what we have? And these types of questions, I think, can only be answered by getting this type of knowledge, by going through the course and seeing, what does it take to create a machine learning classifier? Is it 10 years, or is it something that can be done in 1 year? How much data? And so on and so forth. So I think decision makers are really important people to learn this. And another section of people who would benefit is, I think, kind of the general public, in the sense of being aware of the dangers out there. Like we mentioned, deepfake and voice transfer. So maybe I imagine they wouldn't need to go into as much detail. Like, they don't need to go through creating a malware classifier, but it sure doesn't hurt for them to see how deepfakes are made, how easy it is. I can make a deepfake in 1 day. Like, take your video and bam, deepfake. So it would be very useful for anyone in general to be aware of how machine learning is being used in cybersecurity.
So in your opinion, what are the cybersecurity skills that are currently most in demand and most likely to accelerate your career? Are there skills, either the ones in your class or just that you see out in the world, that people are overlooking in their studies and preparations?
So from my perspective, I look a lot at like the disruptive elements. And for me, it's things like machine learning and various applications of it. But I also keep track, like I look at the cybersecurity news very frequently on a daily basis, and I keep seeing patterns. Like, ransomware is still an issue, and it's actually attacking hospitals at this dark time, which is pretty sad. But that suggests to me that there is, obviously there is a need, since an attack has occurred at a hospital, there is a need for someone to have prepared better to prevent it, or to at least be able to remediate it better. So maybe better auditing seems to be required. Maybe just more people in cybersecurity.
Mm-hmm. So I want to talk a little bit on the sort of the platform of what we're doing here. As online training becomes more ubiquitous, what are your thoughts on skills-focused training versus bootcamp or four-year academic subjects? For your institution, what are the benefits and disadvantages to each type of training, and especially to the difference between skills-based education and training versus the other methods that people might be normally thinking of as sort of the default?
So I think it depends on your current, where you are currently in your career. So if you're just starting out, I think it makes the most sense to do either a boot camp or a 4-year degree. And the reason I think boot camp actually might be better, especially in cybersecurity, is that, it's going to be faster, you have guarantees, and you can focus, you can get job skills, as opposed to in a 4-year degree where it's a little more roundabout, a little less direct, perhaps more expensive. And and this way you are able to basically solve this need experience to get experience paradox. So a lot of people have difficulty entering cybersecurity despite the fact that we have a huge demand, which is very ironic. And I think if you do a boot camp, that places you in a position where you have experience, and now you're off to a great start. You can get more experience. Now, I think once you are already in cybersecurity and you are pretty stable and you have specific requirements, then I think it makes sense to look at skills-based. So let's say hypothetically that I am a malware analyst and we are maybe having trouble with, I don't know, Trojans, say,
Right.
hypothetically,
Mm-hmm.
then it makes sense in terms of time commitment to focus on Trojans as my skill, understand how Trojans work, reverse them, and just dedicate to that skill, as opposed to taking malware analysis course more generally, which is not going to go as in depth and is going to take longer. And you probably know it. If you're in malware analysis, it's too general for you.
Right.
So I think like once you have a job or you have a project you're working on, then you know what you need to drill into, and then it makes sense to go skills-based training.
Okay, so
And of course, it never hurts to keep up the boot camps.
right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they never stop learning. So, so regarding the skills platform, I mean, just to sort of, for people who aren't quite sure what we're talking about, this is, you get, access to X number of skill training courses that are sort of just, they're kind of like podcasts. They're just sort of floating out there, and you pick and choose them as you need and work on them in your own pace. So, without a professor or, a boot camp instructor assigning weekly tasks, some find that it might be hard to stay on track in meeting your learning objectives. Do you have any tips to help lifelong learners stay focused on training and accomplish their goals when there aren't necessarily hard deadlines at the end of them?
Yeah, that's a tough one. So my thinking was, it reminds me of this Jerry Seinfeld advice. So he has this advice for when he was trying to work on his comedy skills. So he wanted to make sure that he writes a joke each day. So what he did was set up a calendar behind him on the wall, and each day that he wrote a joke, he would mark it a big red X.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, as he kept doing it, he had like a chain of these big red X's.
Yep.
And at that point, he had this internal motivation not to break the chain.
Yes.
Like, don't skip a day, because then you will see that you broke the chain.
That's all you see on the calendar is that.
So I think that could be
face. Yeah. Right.
Yes, I think this is a good advice for anyone learning skills. Maybe try to chop up your work into practical chunks that you can finish each day, and then just don't break the chain.
There you go. So what should you be shopping for when seeking out skills-based training? I mean, there's a lot of education programs out there, but what do you think distinguishes, the best ones? What are the sort of products or services or the way they're, handled or whatever? What constitutes the best ones?
So I think that the best, so it's really important that the education provider gives you a good experience. So I think this is like a follow-up on the previous question, in the sense that if you have a good experience in your course or in your skills-based training, then it's more likely that you will keep going, that you'll keep coming back, and you'll keep learning. Whereas if you had problems like customer service was bad, or the platform crashed, or whatever it is,
Right.
then you kind of have this bad experience, and you're less likely to keep going, and you will break the chain. So I think you want to make it easier for yourself to not break the chain and get quality education. So somewhere where you get good customer service, a good experience, and a good platform.
So for people who might want to sign up for your class, and of course, listeners of this podcast can use promo code CYBERWORK to get a free month. What tips do you have for anyone who wants to get the most out of your classes specifically? And also, once they've completed the coursework, what other areas of study would you recommend within the skills platform to sort of build on it?
Yes, so I would start with cybersecurity data science. There's two learning paths, like mentioned earlier: cybersecurity data science, and then machine learning for red team hackers.
Okay.
And the first one is the fundamentals. So it's pretty hands-on, and I think that's essential in cybersecurity, that you work with real things, like you get
Right.
real samples, you create a real lab, you create an actual classifier, because just reading about it is not going to help you. You're not going to be able to
Yeah.
do it in real time when you need to. So I would suggest working with it. All the assignments are pretty handy. None of it is tedious. And by the end of it, you'll have experience with most of the important aspects of cybersecurity. Like you will have worked with malware, you will have worked with phishing, you will have worked with intrusion detection and pen testing, social engineering, and now you're pretty comfortable. You have a broad base. Afterwards, if you're still motivated to focus on machine learning in particular, then you can go on to machine learning for red team hackers, which is, I think, really interesting. I mean, I personally think it's freaking so interesting
Yeah.
to see how machine learning is used for offensive purposes. And then you can go in depth. So this assumes that you've finished cybersecurity data science, and here you do things like deepfakes, fuzzing using machine learning,
Right.
and even attacks on like actual machine learning systems. So that's, if you want to take your tools and your techniques to like the next level, this is like the cutting edge of technology. So once you're there and you have these skills, then you focus on what you're specializing in. But you now have like a broad foundation from cybersecurity data science, and then you know the cutting edge tools. So now it's just applying what you've learned.
Okay, so one last question before we go. Where do you see deepfake technology going in the coming years? Do you think this is something that's going to be with us for the immediate future, or is this something that legislative agencies will eventually crack down on, or is this, like where do you see it going? Do you see it getting sort of more efficient, more used, or do you see like an endpoint for this sort of thing?
So I think it's actually sort of like the way cybersecurity proceeds in a lot of ways. So you kind of have like the hackers trying out like fringe new technologies, and
Right.
then they use it to like cause trouble. And then the security people catch up, they learn about these technologies, and then they kind of use them for defense. So I think there's going to be a similar thing with deepfake. So right now, most government agencies, police, and so on and so forth are not really employing deep learning technology too much. But we see like hackers utilizing these sort of tools to cause trouble. Like for instance, I mentioned the audio impersonation that led to defrauding by $250,000. So recently, motivated by these sorts of problems, the police have been starting to employ deep learning technologies.
Okay.
So they're using this tool to basically figure out who a suspect is. So like, let's say that you are caught on camera burglarizing a car or whatever it is.
Right.
And just because we have you on camera doesn't mean that we know who it is.
Right.
It's hard to tell, right?
Yes.
So they're now using deep neural networks to solve these sorts of crimes. So they look at the footage that we have of the person committing the crime, correlate it with your social networks and other OSINT and maybe closed information like government databases. And then we figure out, oh, it's Chris, he's burglarizing cars again,
It was me
or
again.
something like that.
Uh,
So I think in the near future, the government agencies and the police force are going to start utilizing the tools for defense.
right. Do you ever see
And
a
then it's
point
going to
where
sort of equalize.
do you see a point where the technology will catch up sufficiently in the Defense Department that it will make the concept of deep fakes obsolete?
I think so. I think a lot of it is going to require other tools like crypto and
Right.
awareness, just that
Yes.
fake things exist. And then it's going to become like just the special effects tools, just like we have plenty in Hollywood. It's not that big of a concern. We know you can add in all sorts of like ways to beautify someone's face, and
Right.
it doesn't work. It's like we can Photoshop faces, right?
There you go. Okay, so one last question for today. If listeners want to know more about Emmanuel Tsukerman, where can they go online to find out about you?
For sure. So you can find me by adding me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
You can find my YouTube channel.
Oh, okay.
And I think more interesting is myself and my team, we write a monthly newsletter about cybersecurity data science. So we basically find the most interesting new things that are happening in cybersecurity and data science, the intersection of the two. And you can find it in newsletter form. So to sign up, you can go to ml4cs.com. So just the letters, the number 4, and then .com. And
Machine
it's
learning
free
for,
and
yeah,
no spam.
it's machine learning for
Cybersecurity.
computer security. Okay. All right, Emmanuel, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciated this. This was very illuminating.
It was a pleasure. I appreciate it.
And thank you all today for listening and watching. If you enjoyed today's video, you may find many more on our YouTube page. Just go to youtube.com and type in Cyberwork with Infosec to check out our collection of tutorials, interviews, and past webinars. If you'd rather have us in your ears during your workday, all of our videos are also available as audio podcasts. Just search Cyberwork with Infosec in your podcast catcher of choice. And if you wouldn't mind, please consider rating and reviewing and liking our videos and so forth. It really does help out, give us a bump, let people know. For a free month of the Infosec Skills platform that we discussed in today's show, just go to infosecinstitute.com/skills and sign up for an account. There'll be a coupon code there, and podcast listeners can type in the word cyberwork, all one word, all small letters, no spaces, and you'll get a free month. Thank you once again to Emmanuel Tsukerman, and thank you all for watching and listening. We will speak to you next week.